Your Excellency, India will play host for the AI Impact Summit in Delhi in February. Why is it important for India to convene this global discussion on AI at this time?
Well, yes, India is hosting the AI Impact Summit in Delhi next month. This will be the fourth such summit in a series after summits in UK, in South Korea, and France. And I think it's important for two reasons. One, from the viewpoint of the Global South. And it's significant to note that this is the first AI summit being hosted in the Global South. And I say that because AI is at an inflection point with the power to reshape the world as we know it. And this has enormous consequences, especially for the Global South. And now is the moment to take into account what can be some of these consequences and try and do something about it, right? And the second reason is we would like this summit to mark a shift from aspiration to impact. In the sense that would AI serve all of us, or would it serve only a few big companies or big geographies? It's an important question because from our viewpoint, AI must foster social development. It must foster inclusive growth. And which is why when we look at the AI summit in Delhi, essentially it has three principles, what we call sutras, revolving around people, planet, and progress. People, how can we use AI to empower humanity? Planet, how can we use AI in a sustainable manner? And progress, how can we use AI to foster inclusive growth? And flowing from these, we have 7 working groups revolving around people, planet, and progress. And each of these working groups is co-chaired by a country from the Global South and also a country from other geographies. For instance, I'll give you an example. When it comes to people, there are 3 working groups. There's one on human capital, there's one on safe and trusted AI, there's one on social empowerment. People, you talked about, when we were talking earlier, you talked about productivity gains from AI. How can we ensure that, how can we use AI for reskilling of workforces? Safe and trusted AI, how can we preserve public trust in digital technologies? On social empowerment, how can we ensure that AI is locally relevant, is culturally relevant? Likewise, on planet, there's a working group on resilience, on efficiency and innovation. How can we use energy efficient AI tools? How can we develop AI tools in an energy efficient manner? Incidentally, that working group is being co-chaired by France and UAE. Then there are 3 working groups related to progress. There is one on science. How can we foster scientific partnerships using AI tools? There is one on democratization of AI infrastructure. How can we ensure equitable access to AI infrastructure, whether it is data sets or compute? And then we have the last working group on economic growth and social goods. Essentially, how can we ensure inclusive economic growth using AI? So if I have to capture our vision for the AI summit, I'd say it's our logo which sums it all, which is Sarv Jan Hitai, Sarv Jan Sukhai, which is for the welfare of all, for the happiness of all. So essentially, we are not pursuing AI for technology's sake. Instead, we are looking at it from the viewpoint of how can it have tangible social impact? How can it improve the lives of the common person on the street?
Last year, the summit was hosted in Paris and Prime Minister Modi attended. Any lessons or inspiration to draw from the French experience as India is now preparing to host this year's edition?
No, absolutely. I think we can draw a lot from the French experience in terms of their emphasis on inclusivity, in their emphasis on the utility of multi-stakeholder collaborations, in their emphasis on ethics and regulatory oversight, especially the importance of upholding fundamental rights. I think France and Europe in general have done commendable work when it comes to focusing on and bringing the world's attention on the need for data privacy, protection of citizens' rights. And mind you, India was a co-chair at the Paris summit, so we are glad that we had that experience. And going forward, I think it's important to remember that the Paris summit was able to to gather a general consensus on the principles of responsible and human-centric AI. But the world is now asking the next logical question, which is probably also slightly more difficult and complex question, which is how do we move from those shared principles to shared practice? How do we unlock the value promised by AI while protecting our privacy, while protecting our commercial IP, and while protecting our digital sovereignty? And that's the momentum which we are trying to build on at the AI Summit in Delhi. And that's also the area where India has pioneered a new architecture which address all these issues, and we call that architecture the data empowerment and protection architecture for AI training. And that's something we are in discussion with France, with Japan, with Brazil for running pilot projects, and I'll be happy to explain that to you.
And moving into practice, as you say, you insist a lot on AI needs to be open, secure, trustworthy. You've just mentioned we need to avoid the growing gap between advanced economies and emerging markets. For India specifically, what does this mean? What would be the vision here?
Yeah, I think when you mention open, secure, and trusted, these are three interconnected imperatives, and how the development shape pertaining to all these three will in the end determine whether we are really able to unlock the value of AI or AI serves to increase inequalities. By open, we mean the foundational models, the research tools, the data sets, the compute. It must not be locked behind proprietary barriers. There have to be shared protocols. There has to be transparent governance, because Global South cannot remain merely consumer of AI. It has to also be a co-creator of it. And that's the risk we are trying to address through open platforms. By secure, we mean robust safeguards against threats like deepfakes or disinformation campaign. And these are essential for all economies. It's whether global emerging economies or developed economies. And likewise, by trusted, what we mean is the models or the tools which are there, you have to make sure that they are fair. You have to address the issue of bias. You have to ensure accountability. You have to ensure that there are no discriminatory outcomes. And these are essential in high stakes domains like let's say law enforcement or education, healthcare, employment, right? And these are very, very essential for everybody, especially for the Global South. So that's why we think that it's important for the Global South to sort of keep in mind three broad principles, which is one is of which I said already. It has to empower the common person on the street. It has to be scaled up to address an existing socio-economic issue, right? The second issue is, the second principle would be one of the data sovereignty, which is Global South is very rich in data, but it's very AI poor because data is fragmented. How can you use AI to harness that data through curated data sets to solve practical problems, which means the local data has to be harnessed for local needs through a vibrant ecosystem of local applications. And third, of course, is principle of cultural sovereignty. The model, the AI tools must respect the local conditions, the local diversity, the local cultural aspects of it.
You've just been speaking about what AI means for the people in the street. The Asia-Pacific region is considered to be ahead of the curve when it comes to adoption of AI. A recent report from BCG has found that 92% of Indian employees are using AI several times a week. What does this mean for India's economy, Indians' workforce, and Indians' global influence?
Well, actually, I'm not surprised by this data point. We have in India a very young demographic. We have one of the highest usage of smartphones in the world. We have one of the highest rates of internet penetration in the world. One of the highest rates of mobile data usage in the world at one of the lowest prices in the world. And frankly, that has been crucial to the success of our digital public infrastructure. Now, we are building the AI layer on top of that infrastructure. And going forward, I think the real utility of these AI tools is, as I said, India is a data-rich country, right? Can we use those AI tools to curate those data sets, to harness the fragmented data into something more productive? For instance, fintech has been one of the areas where one of the world leaders, right? There is enormous potential. I think I was reading some data points somewhere. It's a $500 billion market in India right now, where we can use this fragmented data, for instance, to develop tools to increase credit, formal credit, to more than 400 million underserved people or MSMEs. Similarly, in health sector, we can harness fragmented data to develop new therapeutics, new diagnostic techniques, or to even modernize and better use our public health management. Likewise, in education, as I said, we are a young demographic, to use AI tools to develop personalized learning techniques, and to have or to afford people or to give people portable credit skills. So there's absolutely enormous potential. I'll come back to the same point I made earlier, because I think that's central to our vision. What we are looking at is whether and how we can use AI to address socioeconomic problems on scale. And mind you, we're talking about a country of 1.4 billion, which means if there is a method, an architecture, a tool which succeeds in India, chances are it will succeed outside India as well, given the incredible diversity we have in India. And a good example of that is our digital public infrastructure.
Yeah. India is making gigantic steps in AI, as you're saying and describing, Your Excellency. There are also two giants, the United States and China. Still, you said it, India has 1.4 billion population. Even more important, 13% of the global talent pools of AI sits in India. How do you see India play a role in the coming days at the summit to start shaping the global AI ecosystem?
I think there are probably two broad ways. One is what I alluded to earlier, which is that while at Paris we were able to achieve a general consensus on the principles, now we are faced with the challenge of translating those principles into practice on the ground, and therefore there's a deficit of sorts, and that deficit arises from three different points. One is the technical point. You're familiar that these AI models have the so-called black box, in the sense nobody's absolutely certain about how it works. So it's a tricky issue for governance, therefore. And then you have the legal and jurisdictional issues. For instance, you have EU's GDPR, which talks about, let's say, minimal use of data, or the right to erasure, which flies in the face of reality of AI models, or which are data hungry. And even though you carry out anonymization of data, it's not complete anonymization, right? And then you have oversight issues, because the regulatory bodies are understaffed, and the technology is moving at such a rapid pace, they're not able to do justice to their function. So that's where India has pioneered an architecture in which the compliance is inbuilt into the very architecture, which we call the DAPA architecture. So essentially, look, you have the data provider, you have the compute, and you have the data consumer. So in this architecture, the compute, we regard it as a public utility run by a self-regulatory organization, which is a multi-stakeholder body, which has representatives from the government, from the industry, from AI domain, aggregation of data providers, data consumers. So it is this self-regulatory organization which enters into electronic, machine-readable contracts with data providers, provides a confidential clean room where the compute actually happens without the data ever being exposed to the data consumer. The story doesn't end there. after the AI model has been developed or an app has been developed, it is this organization which certifies that that particular tool is actually fair, it is and safe for use. And it also provides a sort of watermark for auditing whatever token has gone into it. So it's a very new, novel approach which addresses pretty much all these concerns by building into the design itself. And that's something which India has to offer. And I think the second broad point which I wanted to make was the way we are treating AI as a public utility for solving social problems. So we created something called India AI Mission a couple of years ago. And the idea was to address each of these pillars and see how we can take it forward in India. So we have a pillar which works on curation of data sets, on bringing together the fragmented data sets. We have a pillar on compute, which provides computing as a public service or computing as a service. We have a pillar on development of foundational models, a pillar on development of AI applications, specifically in applications like agriculture, healthcare, education, governance, climate resilience. We have a pillar which addresses the skilling part. So we are offering incentives for undergrad level, for graduation, for doctoral studies. We have a pillar which focuses on financing of startups, and then we have a pillar which focuses on the safety and trust aspects of AI. And that's something which we can really share with the world, our experiences, and to see how best practices can be shared.
I think this type of infrastructure will foster impact, and you've been talking a lot about impact. The good news is that another study from BCG is showing that in the East, 76% of CEOs are more convinced than ever about the impact of AI. So there's huge appetite there. What do you think business leaders need to think about when it comes to investing in AI, governing AI, or deploying it at scale and responsibly?
Well, I don't think I'm anybody to advise anybody else on this issue. In all humility, what I'll say is two things. One, be mindful of ethics and public interest. And second, be mindful of the fate of Prometheus.
Your Excellency, thank you for sharing your views on AI, such an important topic, and looking forward to see the huge success of the Global AI Impact Summit in Delhi in February.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's very kind of you. Pleasure.